Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Citrix Sharefile, secure file transfer built for business. Visit sharefile.com, click on the microphone, and enter TWIST for a free 30-day trial. And by Walker Corporate Law, a boutique law firm specializing in the representation of entrepreneurs. Visit them at walkercorporatelaw.com. And by AWS Activate, the Amazon Web Services Startup Program. It's easy to start and scale your business with AWS. Visit aws.amazon.com/activate. This episode is part 2 of Jason's conversation with Austen Heinz of Cambrian Genomics. We are at TWI Startups, and the man at the mic is at Jason on the Twitter.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah, money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah, we ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
So let's talk about the dark side of this. I asked you earlier and we didn't get to it, but are people doing nefarious stuff with these tools currently, do you think? Not here, of course. I don't think there's somebody staying overnight and making frogs that explode and, have like gunpowder in them, although that might be interesting to a lot of 10-year-old boys. What's going on in the rest of the world in terms of who has access to the technology today? Does Kim Jong-un have access to this?
No. What's crazy is like the richest companies in the world, like a GlaxoSmithKline or a Roche Pharmaceuticals, they're the richest in the world. When you want to make a new drug, you really want to print out 1 million variations of it. Okay?
Why?
Because 4 times 4 times 4 times 4, the space that you're exploring is enormous. And you have to use computers that can compute the quantum mechanics of protein folding to give you predictions about how can I make one that will give me this fold with this activity.
Got it.
And so what people do now is monkeys writing Shakespeare. They have the ability to look at millions of different things. High throughput screening been around since the 80s, right?
Yeah.
But it costs $1,000 for 1,000 letters. That means one of these plates is $384,000. 3 plates is $1 million. So if I'm going to actually look at 1 million different sequences, that's 1,000 times $1 million or $1 billion.
Okay.
Which is maybe more than they would make in a year. Total revenue. If you go to a few million sequences, you're looking at more than some countries like GDP. Right? So this is enabling from the richest to the poorest.
Right.
No one's really getting the ability, the chance to really write stuff in a programmed way on a computer.
Right.
It's
and
like
that software is out now. That's open source software to do?
There is open source software. Yeah, it's called Foldit. Folding at home, people used to run it on distributed computers. A guy at Stanford would do that. And then a guy named Adrian Troy, who I think is either at Stanford or Google right now, he is the guy who developed Foldit, which is a gamified version where you have kids all over the world playing this game to design cool proteins.
And those proteins eventually would be products or innovations.
The problem is that the computer software is nowhere near as good as it could be simply because it can make predictions about what may happen.
Right.
But it can't, it's got to scan the space. It's got to explore the space. And then you can feed back information into your software. This worked, this didn't. And then the software gets better. Right now it's open loop. It's just like, well, try out these 1 million, but I can only afford 10. So, okay. Right.
And as you keep going, you're going to just keep plummeting the cost of this.
Oh, yeah.
Because the cost right now is time, is it? And
it's around $1 a letter. So what people usually do, since it's so expensive, think about it. A few genes cost as much as a car.
Right.
So what people will do is they'll try to find some species in nature, whether it's a firefly or, and they'll try to physically cut it out and then stitch on pieces. And
so what did that process cost for the tobacco plant that glows?
Well, this is only 5 genes. We can make, right now we're doing around 8 million base pairs per run. And so what's the cost? It's a few bucks for our chip to make the DNA. We got to pay $1,000 per run for the sequencing reagent. And then we grow all the enzymes for assembling it here. So you're looking at, what's the cost? It's a little bit more than sequencing. So, a few $1,000s for 8 million base pairs internal cost. And so instead of $1,000 for one gene, $1,000 can buy, thousands of genes.
Are we going to, in terms of, you talked before about everything in life will be, all life on the planet will have been programmed, right? So that's kind of like either, depending on who you are, an incredibly utopian or dystopian worldview. But let's assume that some percentage of life we have our hand in printing and we let some other things just organically grow. Are we going to currently be able to look at a human and just block out the cancer genes, block out the blindness gene? The generations before us, we can't do anything for them, right? You can't shoot stuff into their cells and have it change.
Well, there's certain things you can do because you have organs. You can now grow organs.
Right.
So you could take out the cells from the organ, modify the genes, grow up the whole organ, take their existing organ out, and put the new organ in. That's a possibility.
Right, which they're doing with hearts, right? They're now 3D printing hearts, and those are kind of stable. But they're muscle.
I think right now they're doing kind of like bladders, vaginas. They haven't gotten too complex yet.
They're not doing brains.
Eventually, no brains.
Obviously.
Eventually they'll be able to do
hardest.
everything with the exception of brains, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And so there's so many applications for people that have existing disorders through gene therapies as those get better, and they are getting better. But it's much easier when you have, like you said, when you have a single cell. So that's what we're doing right now with an initiative to make happy, healthy babies that do not have genetic diseases.
So are people currently modifying, or what's the state of modifying people who are going to be artificially inseminated? Because I know people are spinning, where I hear this term, spinning for gender.
Okay.
But that doesn't have to do with changing the actual genes, right? So are people actually changing genes for babies
At this point, it's selection. So people, kind of Gattaca style, I think in that movie, it's mostly selection. I don't even think they actually do genome design. I think it's more selection.
I think
in the
it's
movie.
selection, right.
And so this field is called pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. So this is taking IVF couples who have embryos and trying to qualify the embryo prior to putting it in, as opposed to using this barbaric process, which pretty much everyone that uses IVF does now, is take an unqualified embryo, or several, because most of them are unqualified, and then putting them into a woman and hoping for the best.
Right.
Now that's a horrible, horrible way to go about things.
Right.
Why is it so bad? Because think about it, they're already in, and so the likelihood you could have octuplets. If you have a double, it's a 50% chance underweight. Triples, 95%, over 90% chance they're going to be underweight. And the other thing is, it's barbaric. I mean, so you can do genome sequencing now. Veronata Health, a few other companies let you sequence it once it's inside. But then, what if it has Huntington's disease and it dies when it's 40? Should you abort? Even though it's going to die at 40, it's this weird ethical thing. Whereas if you're qualifying your embryos prior to putting it inside the patient.
How do they qualify them exactly?
So currently, it's pretty primitive. They're looking for chromosomal abnormalities, or they're looking for a single gene. So they'll grow it from a single cell up to maybe 7 cells or 8 cells, and then biopsy one of the cells, and then they can look at it, right? So what's starting to happen now is they're doing full genome sequencing on those cells.
Wow.
So you get a whole readout for $1,000. And so how much is IVF? It's not covered by insurance, by the way. Right. We think that's going to change because once you can qualify embryos,
the person's life insurance for the rest of their life could be 1/100th of an unqualified.
Or 1,000,000th. I mean, a single preemie can cost $1 million.
So
it's just for a preemie.
So in the future, having a unqualified baby, let's call it, versus a qualified one,
would be thought of totally barbaric, insane.
Insane to have an unqualified baby.
You'd be mentally ill to do something like that. Yeah,
you literally would not qualify for health insurance in the future. They would be like,
I don't know about that.
How could you have if you had a qualified babies? I mean, just thinking about it on an economic basis, it would be unfair to charge somebody who had a qualified baby the same price as somebody who had an unqualified one. It would be like letting somebody drive a car without airbags or crumple zones, or a shatterproof windshield, the same price for insurance as somebody who had all those safety mechanisms who drove the speed limit. I mean, I know it sounds unfair from a ethical perspective, organic life versus doing this, but
I mean, I tend to think in the future, everything is going to be much cheaper. With this technology, you can make chemicals and materials for orders of magnitude cheaper. I think medicine is way overpriced, and it's very barbaric the way it works. I mean, we're going to be able to have fully digital medicine where we're reading and writing, for individuals, and that's.
Hey, everybody, let me take a moment to tell you about Citrix Sharefile. It's designed for business, and it's a cloud you can trust and send files securely in. We use it here for important stuff like sensitive documents, IP, contracts, term sheets, that stuff. Things you don't want to put as an attachment on email. And you can send them all as just secure links with Sharefile, and you can send files of almost any size, access them from your computer or mobile device, obviously. And we have some screenshots here, or actually I'm logged in right now, and you can see you can do very granular controls, and this is very important to us. We want people to be able to download stuff and upload stuff, but maybe we don't want them screwing around with the files or uploading to a different directory or creating new folders. You get the idea. And we can see a log of what everybody's done in the system. This is actually very critical for us, so we don't have anybody, accessing files that we don't want them to access. That would be bad, obviously. And so what I want you to do right now is go to sharefile.com, click the podcast listeners microphone button, and use the offer code TWIST, TWIST. So go to sharefile.com, click the podcast listeners microphone button, and use the offer code TWIST. No credit card required, 30-day free trial. And we have a special offer for people who try out Sharefile. You can get How to Raise Money from Angel Investors Part 2. Now, this is Part 2 to the video we did earlier this year, and you can only get it through Sharefile. Step 1, sign up for Sharefile using the promo code TWIST. Step 2, request a file to sharefile@launch.co, sharefile@launch.co. When you request that file, we'll send you the new How to Raise Money from Angel Investors Part 2. We love Sharefile here at Launch and the Launch Festival and This Week in Startups. We use it all the time. It's a great product. It's super powerful and super easy to use. So please go give it a trial, and go ahead and use that offer code TWIST so that they know our audience is so loyal. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode.
Hey, what happens if you fuck up? Let's be honest here, because there's a lot of power going on in this place. I can sense it. And if you were to screw up making bacteria and it gets out of control, I mean, is this going to wipe out half the population? Like, if somebody messes up and makes something in their lab at home when this stuff gets cheap enough to do it or whatever, that, a super Ebola, a super virus, a super bird flu, it is possible that somebody right now could be looking at what kills most effectively in venom, in rattlesnakes, or whatever the most powerful venom is, and then putting that into something that spreads it massively.
Our genetic switches so that you infect everyone in the population, but no one knows until the clock is switched and they all flip into place and everyone dies.
So that's what you've done, basically? We all die in 2030 and you take over the planet like Lex Luthor? It's basically you're saying you could put a zero-day attack into humans?
Yeah. So you could, so I could give you I'll give you the BS answer and a good answer. Yeah. Okay, so the BS answer is that I think companies say now is like, hey, we look at everything and we match with the CDC database. We make sure we don't print anything bad. We don't send it to a residential address, some guy. And so we're only shipping to large pharmaceutical companies, and why would they want to be interested in doing something like that? But a better answer is that will quickly change. No longer will DNA go out the door. So what am I talking? I'm talking about virtualization, full virtualization of the platform, meaning you don't get polymer on plates in the mail. You get data over a computer.
You get an attachment.
Yeah. So you send us
open attachment, and what happens?
You send us digital data. We send you back digital data. So we make a million strands, or a billion strands, and we look at a million or a billion video files. We do image processing on that machine learning, and we basically capture all that information and send it back to you for you to do your next design. That analysis happens at a core facility.
So that'll be locked down.
Yeah.
So if some jokester is like, hey, I'm going to send up to the network that I want to create a new strand of the bacteria in your stomach, the gut stuff, that actually results in some crazy Ebola-like whatever thing, or zero-day attack.
I mean, the truth is, this power is...
You would know at the home base.
Yeah. I mean, this power, it's like, it's the power to create and destroy entire planets here. I mean, this is like a hydrogen bomb, essentially.
More dangerous.
Maybe more dangerous, perhaps, and more powerful. Yeah. And so the future is full virtualization.
And locking it down.
Lockdown.
It's going to have to be locked down.
It's going to have to be locked down. Yeah.
So I was talking before about bad actors having access or studying this. Do you think there are people out there, rogue governments, terrorists, whatever, thinking about this kind of stuff or working on it? I mean, we didn't think they would be working on nuclear stuff for a while, but they kind of were. How far behind are they? How long would a rogue state like Iran or something?
Like I said, I mean, it's gonna be locked down because we let planes out and planes fly around.
Yeah.
And they're basically giant weapons.
Yeah.
Right. So now they lock the cockpit off.
Yeah.
Right? Which
so
is
basically, the governments and the United Nations and just good people of the free world are going to know how dangerous this is, and it is going to be the next thing we fight. People not having access to who would be bad actors.
Yeah, so national governments, those are kinds of, there's different actors that we can't prevent from stealing the technology, but I don't think it's a fight that anyone really wants to get into because it's not a fun fight.
Yeah. Are you optimistic about the major issues on the planet, or pessimistic given what you know, i.e., global warming, food supply, and pandemics?
Given what I know, I just think people are, these liberal environmental groups are the dumbest idiots. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Like, technology will solve all of the problems that we have, from starvation to sickness to global warming,
drought,
to water.
Famine.
There isn't anything that we can't solve through genetic engineering, including making humans that are smart enough to solve the next great physics problem, right?
Right. So you could literally create the superhuman capable of figuring out global warming if, in fact, we can't make some plant.
If we can't already, but already, the air we're sucking in right now was made 2 billion years ago. There was no oxygen on Earth. It was just like rocks and stuff, right?
Right.
All this gases, and many of these gases were, the oxygen, it was created by the life on the planet.
So terraforming.
Yeah.
How far off is that? I mean, could we do something on the moon to make it Earth-like? And what's the timeline for that? Because that's something that, becoming multiplanetary, backing up the biosphere, as Elon says, a lot. Like, that's definitely sounds like a good plan to get more people off this planet so that if this planet goes, we know. But do you think we could be terraforming stuff in 100 years?
What Elon likes to talk about is like reducing things to first principles, and that's physics. Mm-hmm. And I'd go with the same route. If it's physically possible, it's possible, but certain things are physically impossible based off our current understanding of physics. So terraforming planets that don't have ionospheres or that produce magnetic fields to shield itself from the solar radiation that is pushing everything off, you're not going to be too successful. But could you make a contained biosphere? Could you, really your only limit as far as living outside of Earth, I think one of the main limits is just water. If there's water there, long-term survival is, in Mars there is water. So, but space travel, people always think about, we're going to freeze people and just ship them off.
Yeah, that seems to be like
That's wrong.
A tenet that we're going to slow people's heart rates down.
Dumb.
It's dumb.
Yeah. What's going to happen is we're going to send off DNA laser printers on spaceships. They travel, probably the equipment and the chemicals maybe will last 1 million years. 1 million years later, boot on, and then they start printing out humans and everything else. What's really crazy, is that on a single piece of glass, you really got a Noah's Ark. So on a single piece of glass, we can put 1 billion genes.
1 billion.
Okay,
and
how many?
Humans have 6?
We have 22,000 genes.
Oh, 22,000 genes, right?
Yeah.
6 billion.
6 billion letters. So most of that is what people call junk DNA.
Right. You don't need it.
Yeah, but it's not clear on what we need and what we don't need yet. So we don't know enough. Yeah. If you have large deletions, the reason why we have all this junk is partially because of viruses. If we were just coding sequence and a virus came in and inserted, it causes all kind of problems. But when a virus lands now, it's got a 99.9% chance that it's not going to actually hit the functional stuff. Right. So it's a buffer.
Got it.
So that's something people don't necessarily understand. But anyway, this is basically Noah's Ark. So if everything were to die, on the planet, you could back everything up on a single piece of glass, at least all the genes.
Right. And just have some biological source material.
Every mammal, every plant, all on a piece of glass.
And are we able to now sequence from, remnants that we're finding full DNA or just partial?
Yeah. Yeah, so
What's the state of that?
DNA will last 1 million years or so, but it will get fragmented over time.
Right.
But we can use sequencers and computational capabilities to stitch it back together.
And they're doing this with the woolly mammoth now, right?
The Neanderthal and the passenger pigeon. So looking at resurrecting and this is something George talks about a lot, is...
George Church from Harvard's lab for this. What is that Harvard school called?
It's Harvard Medical School.
Harvard Medical School. And George is...
At one point he was the chair.
The chair, yeah. And so he believes we're going to...
Or the head of the Harvard
We're going to bring
School.
those back. We're going to have the carrier pigeon or the woolly mammoth or the Neanderthal living. It's going to be Jurassic Park.
Yeah, extinction is a myth. Jurassic Park has 65 million-year-old dinosaurs. The DNA is only going to last 1 million. But you can imagine Chickosaurus rexes... chickens with the sharp teeth and the claws, and then you make them larger and larger over time.
So we could just approximate the raptor until it goes haywire.
Yeah, no, it'll just be like the game Spore. And so in Spore, they have a game feature called Creature Creator, where you get to imagine new creatures and create them. And so that's what we're doing here, is we're letting people kind of open up their imagination and send us, if you got a really great idea. All the ideas so far have been internal, but we're going to be opening up the platform to everyone.
When will you open that up and people can pitch you? Because that sounds like you're going to get a lot of crazy... You understand they're going to be crazy people in the lobby.
I get crazy people call me every day.
What's the crazy ideas that people come to you and... literally insane people come to you and you're like, oh my God.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea, right?
The kelp mining thing, and then having, the metals be attached to those, the balloon things in the kelp, and they float up to the surface and wash onto shore. And, some crazy person told me about that. I got a call some of these ideas are so insane. A lot of really good ideas actually come out of these companies, of people in the community who bought the product.
Right.
So one of the first ideas people had was with this glowing plant was plants are very sensitive to touch. So why don't we make grass so that you walk across a grass field,
my God,
it lights
genius.
up behind you.
The path lights up behind you.
Or with the poop company, people said, hey, if you can change the poop, why don't you make pigeons that poop street cleaner? Or why don't you make cows, that are raised industrial, make it smell good, so you're riding down the 5, not so bad of a smell. Also, let's make the nitrogen fall out of solution and so it doesn't get into our rivers and our oceans, and you don't have these giant algal blooms and the red tides and whatnot.
Yes, Scott Walker is a good friend of mine, and he runs the Walker Corporate Law Group. They are a boutique law firm that specializes in the representation of entrepreneurs. He has chosen in his life to make his mission to help entrepreneurs and founders, just like I have. And he does it so well. He's got a team of people with decades of experience at the big firms. And he gives flat rate pricing for things like mergers and acquisitions and forming your company and licensing agreements, terms of service, privacy policies, all those things. Fixed fees will let you sleep well at night knowing that you're not going to get slammed with some ridiculously huge bill. I see Scott at all the events I do. He's constantly sitting there talking with young entrepreneurs, older entrepreneurs, just helping them, get through these complicated legal issues deftly and easily. Go to walkercorporatelaw.com, walkercorporatelaw.com, or give him a call directly, 415-979-9998, 415-979-9998. And you can email him, Scott at Walker Corporate Law, Scott at Walker Corporate Law. He's a really great guy, and he's got a great team, and they really help startups. They're not going to crush you with bills. They do that fixed rate thing, but they also just care, and that's what you're really looking for in a partner, and you really need to have a great attorney when you're going to build a great company, because there's a lot of issues that are going to come up, and I highly recommend you call Scott Walker, 415-979-9998. Thanks, Scott, and thanks to your team for helping all the startups who listen to This Week in Startups. Let's get back to this amazing episode.
Now, wasn't at some point Ventnor was working with either BP Oil or somebody like that to do an algae, genetically modified algae fields that would be a new fuel source because they would be blooming methane or something, but that got shut down or something.
Yeah.
So what about alternative fuels?
But Solazyme is doing well.
What is that, Solazyme?
Solazyme produces oils from microbes.
Wow.
Similar way, but most of those have transitioned to high value products. So high value oils. So oils for the cosmetics industry, oils for fragrances, specialty oils, where they can sell at a higher multiple.
Got it.
When you're just digging something out of the ground, it's
kind of hard
just,
to compete.
You stick a pipe in and suck it out versus grow it in a ferment or even I think it's pretty close. It's not that far off. But when we do suck everything out,
which is
you switch over. Yeah.
And what about food? Because that is a big issue.
Oh, yeah.
Sustainability in food and just also like great tasting stuff.
Yeah.
Could you make a super truffle?
Oh, yeah. So California, they had this big issue. There was a controversial political thing like, hey, they
foie gras?
That one too. But they wanted to label all the GMOs.
Right.
All the hippie liberal people, right?
Right.
And I was like, great, do that. Because once people realize like 70% of their diet is GMO, they'll shut the F up.
They won't care. But this is something in Europe where the GMO movement they're
still eating they're eating GMO all the time over there. They don't even realize how much GMO.
So you're not scared of genetically modified stuff. In fact, some genetically modified stuff should be better.
Oh yeah, we can put all kinds of good things in it that we can't make that it doesn't make naturally.
So GMO somehow has a bad name. But in fact, it probably should have a good one.
And I think a lot of that is due to Monsanto. I mean, that Monsanto is a company I think that developed Agent Orange, like some really horrible.
They got a rough track record. I mean, everything you hear about Monsanto is basically like it's run by, Mr. Burns.
Yeah, and so they couldn't shed that reputation. It just they've tried, but Monsanto's saving lives all over the planet. They're saving way more lives than these Greenpeace idiots trying to shut down nuclear power.
Yeah. So nuclear power, obviously, probably one of the biggest pieces to the solution. If we were using nuclear instead of coal today, we wouldn't have the global warming. But because people are so sensitive about the couple of nuclear problems we've had that only killed low thousands of people.
I don't even know about that.
Maybe even hundreds.
Maybe like a total of 100 people have ever been killed ever.
Right, and we have
versus 100 people killed a day in China in the coal mining, in the mines.
Oh yeah, I mean every time
in a day.
It's basically every time people die in a coal mine, it's probably the equivalent
of everyone that's ever died ever
from a nuclear accident.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And plants and microbes can be used to deal with radiation, like radiodurans or other things.
Right. You could actually make a plant that made Chernobyl or Fukushima.
Or just eats the stuff, and processes it. There are already bugs that do that.
There are?
Yeah.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah. We've actually learned a lot about how to survive in space from these bugs because their whole genomes get blasted apart by the radiation. And they're able, like Transformer-like, to self-assemble all back together again.
Really?
Yeah. So understanding those bugs and how they function really critical to traveling in space where you're exposed to so much radiation.
All right, Austen. I could sit here and literally talk for hours with you, but we've already talked for well over an hour.
But I don't want to confuse people too much. We're a company that makes DNA, sell it on plates.
You sell DNA on plates
for cheap.
For cheap.
Yeah.
And you can start a company that does something modest but intriguing or maybe provides massive value.
If you've got a consumer product, you can crowdfund it and you can get money in the first couple of weeks.
Yeah. You know what I want? I want a banana with half as much sugar in it. That's what I want because I love bananas, but there's so much sugar in them and I'm supposed to be eating less sugar. That's one thing. How about a hamburger or...
That's grown in a lab or,
Not necessarily grown in a lab. I guess this would be like, if I could, I don't have a cholesterol problem, but I have a calorie problem. This is it, bread. Could you genetically make bread that didn't spike my insulin so much and that just didn't make me as fat so I could eat pizza again?
Or just cut out your pancreas or whatever and then give you another one that's better functioning, genetically modified, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying. To just modify stuff.
Yeah, you could take out one of your organs that doesn't function so well, most likely because of a genetic defect.
Interesting. And we'll all be skinny and beautiful.
Well, the microbiome is a great place to do work there, right? Huh. They're like little factories, right? They change our moods. They're constantly processing the things we're eating and then releasing it into our bloodstream, right? So if we can use that for good to alleviate diseases of the gut as well as to do beneficial things, maybe like weight loss.
And you can change people's moods.
And the moods. Just make them produce LSD all day, right?
Well, you just make people happy or trippy all day.
Sure.
I mean, there's some things we don't know about our brains and what our bodies are capable of.
What's great though is it's all digital. Like everything that's in here is it's digital, and you can read it and you can go and see, what's there, and then you write out something that improves it and put it in there, right?
Right.
I don't know why I made that motion. I guess
you were shooting the gun into the cells.
Yeah, right.
That's the cells being implanted with the new structure.
Yeah, or inside the patient, right?
Right.
So I think this will happen very fast. People will be able to do custom microbiomes, and I think in short order we'll see the first new experimental personalized treatments for cancer and all kinds of
that's
diseases.
the thing people have been talking about is, hey, we're getting close to being able to do a cancer treatment for you.
Yeah, so people are now doing full genome sequencing on cancer cells, and then you can take some immune cells out, rewrite the code so that they recognize those specific cells, put them back in. You got a personalized cancer solution. The issue is
they haven't done that yet.
The issue is the FDA and all these things that I've been talking about. I think the supplements think of maybe get around that, but the FDA is set up for a small molecule or a medical device, something that's fixed over a 10-year or 20-year time period, not something that's unique or designer for the individual. But what's great is there's national governments all over the world that are open to progress in this space.
And who's the most open and the place where we'll see, what will be the Switzerland of bank accounts, but the Switzerland of or the Cayman Islands of this space?
Well, the Cayman Islands.
Oh, quite literally.
Quite literally.
The Cayman Islands is just willing to do anything.
It's an hour flight from Miami. It's an hour and a half from Houston.
Has
it's 2
anybody
hours
set up
from
there
New
yet?
York. Yeah, they have a whole. Actually, you should maybe have them on the show. Have them fly here and come on the show. But they actually have something called Cayman Enterprise City, and they're looking at diversifying the economy because it was built around banking. Now they have to publicly disclose all American bank accounts to the U.S. government.
Oh, that was part of some agreement.
So HSBC and lots of banks are leaving the Caymans because it's no longer the unregulated place that it was.
They caved for some reason.
I guess financial crisis, whatever. Yeah.
But now they're going to try to do it. The Cayman Islands are going to try to do it for
biotech. Yeah.
And allow people to do more experimenting.
It's fairly easy to if you're interested in doing a health company in the Caymans, just shoot me an email.
Are you doing that now or no?
Yeah.
So you have companies there?
Not companies. We're in the process of setting up a clinic.
Oh, you're setting up a clinic
in
there.
partnership with existing private hospital. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
To do more radical experimentation or radical testing?
No, I wouldn't say it's so radical. There's off-the-shelf treatments right now that work really well that can save limbs and lives.
So just faster.
Just applying modern technology. So sequencing, I sequence your gut and see, C. difficile is going crazy. I immediately print out a phage, which is a virus that will attack that bacteria and also provide some probiotics. Do what's called a microbiome transplant using an enema. And you just resequence after, make sure you made the proper changes and fix them right there. And they don't have to get their guts cut out, and they don't have to bleed to death on an operating table.
But the FDA would never allow this. We're not in time.
No, because the way the FDA is structured is for, so if you had a microbiome concoction, you would have to for an individual, you would have to wait 10 years for that to be approved for the individual. They would be dead in 10 years. So it doesn't work. Same thing with infections. People are getting MRSA. There's now companies who are sequencing companies for infections.
Interesting.
A little boy right across the street at UCSF, just his life was saved by, instead of doing some culture that would take several months, just did genome sequencing of his spinal fluid and was able to find the thing that was killing him. And then, add a pill that was specific for that.
Did they have to leave the U.S. to give him the pill or go out
luckily, it was a small molecule antibiotic that was to a bacteria that was not yet resistant. But there are many bacteria that are now resistant to broad spectrum antibiotics. MRSA is killing young kids, literally eating their hands and feet off. And so if you want to keep your hands and your feet and you don't want to have your intestines cut out and shit into a bag, you're going to go to the Cayman.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this could be a whole thing where people live within, any flight would be enough time to get there.
It's an hour. It's a public health issue putting sick people on planes.
Yeah.
But
you got to take a private plane.
If it's a life or death thing, I think people would be willing to cough up, 10, 20K.
So we're going to see do you think the FDA is going to radically change? Or some states, they're going to have to,
I think Balaji Sarvisian, it's insane. Like, he writes this article on TechCrunch, right? The founder of Council, now processing 4% of all humans, new humans being born, right? Sequencing the parents prior to them, copulating or whatever, having the baby. But, he always talked about the exit, the power of the exit. You don't change Walmart by joining a job at Walmart, getting a job at Walmart. You start Amazon.com, and that forces Walmart to open Walmart Labs.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
And so I think the FDA will be on the path of changing, just because how much death and, horrible, the quality of life for people that have gut issues, young people, many, many young people I know with celiac, or some of these awful diseases, just every day is a rough experience.
Yeah, no, it's brutal. That. I mean, they live with it day in and day out. They don't sleep. They have pain until they get their gut ripped apart.
And so, C-sections, they don't get the bacteria. Yeah. And so it can be fixed in a fairly straightforward way. And it's what's infuriating about the United States medical system is that doctors will laugh at some of these things. Oh, you want to do a fecal transplant? Aha, you know what that means. Haha, I'd rather slice them open and have them shit into a bag the whole life rather than laugh at rather than do that joke thing.
They're nowhere near the level of training to understand this stuff, right? It's like two different sciences.
No, I mean, they're mechanics, they're going in and they're doing a mechanic's job off of something that's been approved by the Mechanics Association, and the AMA. The AMA is another thing that pisses me off, the AMA not letting us have rights to our own information about who we are. Messed up, right? Shutting down 23andMe.
Right.
So what's cool about it is, the way around it basically is that they say, oh, you can have your DNA. You own your DNA. It's your DNA, right?
Right.
But we can't. No one's allowed to tell you what that is. They're not allowed to provide any medically relevant data on it.
Right.
And so what's the value of it?
Because the second they start saying this is Parkinson's, this is this, they have some degree of responsibility.
Oh, because that person is immediately going to buy a sawed-off shotgun and blow their head off. In the United States, since 23andMe, there has been 0 fatalities ever recorded, known as a result of people finding out there, a possible gene that may cause something in the future that's maybe even totally, speculative or whatever.
So we're just basically in this situation where people are, like nuclear, doing no nukes concerts, not realizing that in the long term, burning coal and pulling it out of the ground is just killing us and the environment much worse than a couple of nuclear power plants.
Yeah, it's something like where, new technology comes out and people immediately want to demonize, say it's horrible when, it can solve a lot of human suffering.
How long are people going to live 20, 30 years from now, you think?
Well, the reason why we die is because we evolve that way. Older people collect parasites. They also, men anyway, mutate their genetic material, meaning it would be more expensive for the body to try to preserve or not mutate that genetic material rather than to just programmatically kill off the old ones and make new ones that have, fresher sauce or whatever.
Yeah.
So we were running a program, a death program. There's, mice and things like that run a program, a 2-year program. There's sharks that run, 80-year programs. There's tortoises that run 170-year programs.
So we could just change the program.
Sure.
Is that going to happen for us, or is it like our kids maybe?
I think it's got to be, later on. To begin with...
I would have liked to live for 200 years. All honesty, I'm not one of these guys who's like, you don't want to live forever. I actually want to live forever. I would like to very much live forever.
Well, I think some interesting things can happen. I think the most interesting is dealing with consciousness.
The big C.
Yeah, I think that's because what is living, right? It's consciousness, right?
And so let's consciousness exists somewhere up here in our cells.
Right.
And we just don't understand it yet.
What if we could pull that consciousness out?
And so thus the singularity.
Yeah. But that is going to have to be grown. It's not like you can stick a metal piece of silicon or whatever.
Yeah.
Brains don't like that. You're going to have to grow it. You have to make optical interfaces.
Honestly, if in the next 20, 30 years you figure out a way for me to grow a second brain and you just put it in a box, I would rather be in a box like Jason Brain and I could just talk to people through a computer monitor.
Oh, we got the robot over there. I don't think
Literally,
we got that in the shot.
I would
got to cut that in.
totally be fine if you want to make me into like R2D2.
Yeah.
Much better to me than dying. I would totally be down with being a brain in a box, just thinking, than dying.
Yeah. I think the larger questions, though, is like once we become fully controlling of our consciousness and we can sit in a room like and have, you know, whoever we want with us or do whatever we want, are we really going to have motivation to, you know, to do things? I think so, but
fully understanding everything.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing I get out. You know, I was on vacation recently, and I was trying to figure out, you know, when you go on vacation, you kind of like think about the meaning of life. And I was like, gosh, you know, we're never going to actually know why we're here, how we got here, or what's out there.
Yeah.
We're just not going to know.
Yeah.
And so what does that leave you with in life? You just have to then make the best of the time you have here.
Well, I think the purpose of every human is to discover and explore. Like we're all native explorers. Like children are designed to be explorers. And what's cool about this is that, you know, we can kind of get further. We can have smarter children. They get a bit further than us. They get a bit further than us, and maybe eventually pull back, you know, the curtains and find out how everything works and how it all is. And then what do you do? Like if you discover that, you know, we're just on this little rock and these are all the fundamental principles and that's it.
The engineers just put us here.
Yeah.
But who built the engineers?
Yeah.
I mean, this is the question. Like,
but until we know, like, you know, as human beings, we keep going because it's fun.
Right. Which sort of gets to my point is like, we're never going to know. So we might as well just have a hell of a good time here.
Yeah. Like who knew I'd be here, you know, 7 years after, you know, all the stuff that I went through in the States and that I would be working on this problem, you know, making like DNA in San Francisco. I'm, you know, and so it's fun, like making new things and inventing things. That's why we're alive. And now that we actually, you know, we got a bunch of physics here, mathematicians. I'm like, you know, you guys are smart, but you're all monkey brain people. You know, if you make some people that are much more intelligent than you, it's going to far exceed whatever you're capable of doing.
That would be quite fantastical.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like, this is probably the tape that they unearthed, just for the viewers who are watching.
They dig this out of the rocks.
Like this is like it's probably like 500 years since this was recorded, and somebody on another planet has just come to the planet and found the piece of glass that then had the person who then had this in their DNA structure.
Yeah.
And this was the beginning of the end when we accidentally spilled some stuff over here that was supposed to make banana poop.
And they'll find all of our investors' AngelList profiles here as well. Million years, yeah.
So that's all the people on HD. You did a syndicate on?
Yeah, no. So HTML. So it's on AngelList. So it took all their AngelList profiles, HTML, convert it to ones and zeros. So a 1 for A and T, a 0 for G and C. You can convert just by reading the A, T, C's, and G's, you can get the binary, and from there you can recreate the HTML.
Got it. So you're going to recreate the HTML in case AngelList is gone. The engineers can recreate it.
Well, in case they want to know the people who finance this thing, millions of years from now.
Insane. All right, listen. I could be here all day talking about this, and this is now going to become a 2-part episode, I think. And so Chris Sacca right now is probably listening to this crying because this is probably going to become, Austen, like the most loved episode in the history of This Week in Startups, although it's definitely going to be up there with Sacca's amazing, epic episode. Austen is not on social media because he's trying to do important shit in the world. I am, because I just like to talk about important shit with brilliant people. You can find me at Jason. You can find the show at TWI Startups. Thank you to our sponsors for making independent media like this and conversations like this possible. Thanks, producer Jackie and Jacob on the 1s and 2s, making it all possible here. Cambrian Genomics, like you heard about it here first.
Laser printing DNA.
Laser printing, 3D printing DNA, democratizing creation, building tobacco that glows and making our farts minty fresh.
Send your ideas to Creature Creator.
CreatureCreator.com.
Austen at CreatureCreator.com.
Austen at CreatureCreator.com.
Or .co.
.co.
Yeah. Austen at CreatureCreator.co. Yeah.
All right. Well, there you have it. And we'll see you next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.
We've made a bunch of DNA on an array, and then we sequenced it. So we made millions of different strands, and now we're going to we sequence them. And then after we sequence them, we've got a bead ID and a sequence associated with each bead. So we go over here, this is the DNA laser printer, and this is the laser, this is the optical train.
Okay.
And it's ejecting DNA onto a plate, like this one. So it's going to eject one DNA, one bead, into each well.
The laser's going off here, I see that.
So you can see the laser will fire, and it will eject the bead that's located in the well. So you see a slight change in the color. That's the bead getting ejected.
And when you say a bead, what is a bead?
It's a piece of metal. It's a spherical metal bead, 3 microns in diameter.
Wow.
Yeah. They're really small, which is why you can fit so many of them on a piece of glass. We read it by looking at the colors. So we look at the color in the first position, all the way up to the position in the 100th. Look at the color in the 100th position. So we basically like flashing lights or blinking Christmas tree lights. You just record what every flash was, and then you know the sequence. Then you know what's good and what's bad, and you can find the good ones and collect them.
And then print it.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it, folks. Printing DNA.
On plates.
On plates. This is the future. We're living in it.